a catchy, eye-catching kind of brand that we can then go out to the public with. So what you see here, before with Organic Week, you see this is like the time, this is the event, and you can see that there's a bunch of corporate logos there because of course they're sponsoring and helping us for the considerable amount of expense that Organic Week is. To get that promotion campaign out there. But the message itself of the Think Before You Eat campaign, it's generic, and by generic I mean it doesn't have anybody's corporate branding on it, and it's there for all of us to use. And so CODA doesn't own this. Well, the minister actually gave us, transferred the intellectual property and the trademarking to us, but we're holding it on behalf of the whole organic sector in Canada, and we're partnering with the provincial associations and anybody who wants to use it, and we're just rolling it out now. So our first stage was to get a website built and to get this campaign, and I have a bunch of literature here to share with you today, some pretty fun stuff. So the message here is we just honed it down to 4 really simple messages for the consumer, and everything we're doing is kind of oriented and based on those. That why eat Canadian organic food? It's great tasting and nutritious. It reduces our exposure to pesticides and GMOs. It's produced and certified to meet national organic standards, and it's healthy for our soil, plants, and animals, and reduces our carbon footprint. So those are our key messages. Everything we're doing to the consumer is bringing part of those messages to it. The concept itself, it's a stop sign, right? It's a stop. It's a challenge. Stop and think what you're doing. Where does your food come from? How was it produced? But we didn't want to be negative, so it's a green plate. It's a plate and a stop sign. And it's about engaging, it's about challenging the consumer to think a bit, but it's also about inviting them in and inviting them to start being part of the organic movement. And so I think in many regards it has a lot of potential, and we'd really love to see this get picked up, and it'll be a big part of how we try to promote organic across the country moving forward. There's also other stuff that's helping us with that message. Rick Smith is the co-author of a book called Talks In, Talks Out. His first book was called Slow Death by Rubber Duck. It's a pretty good title. And in Slow Death by Rubber Duck, these guys are crazy. I call them citizen scientists. They go out and they say, man, that's pretty toxic, all that stuff out there. And then they stop and they say, well, I bet that's in my blood or my urine. And so then they start testing themselves. And they do it using scientific methods, very rigorous, and they do daily blood tests for a week. So one of the things that Rick did was he looked at that new car smell. So when you get into that car, that great smell, right? And he said, that's probably not a good thing. And so he sat in a car for 8 hours with a friend who apparently he doesn't talk to very much anymore. And they were in a heated, to reflect what it's like in the winter to be on a long haul drive, they sat in a heated warehouse inside the car for 8 hours. And they just breathed and talked and stuff. And then he tested his formaldehyde levels, found them through the roof. He did a number of things like this. So he does a lot of these kooky experiments. So in Slow Death by Rubber Duck, he had just had babies. He was he was drinking everything for a week out of their plastic baby bottles. He was eating out of the little plastic bowls. Everything for babies now is plastic. And he was daily testing himself for BPA and other plastic toxins and dioxins. And what he found was really disturbing and really chilling. And the findings in that first book were actually enough to make Canada the first country in the world to ban BPA from all from all baby bottles, and it's spread from there. There's been an incredible consumer awareness around BPA since then, and it was really that book that did that. So the first book was all about what are the toxins we're being exposed to daily, and there's something like 80,000 chemicals that are actively out there that we're exposed to every day, and we're exposed to them in a variety of ways, and nobody understands how they interact with each other. when they're in us. We know about that safe level that the government has determined is, below this threshold, nobody's going to die right away. But we don't really know what happens when they all start piling up. And so everybody was coming to Rick and saying, this is terrible, like all of these toxins in us, how do we get them out? And he was like, I don't know, actually, I haven't done those tests yet. So for the new book, Toxin Tox Out, he looked at how do I get that stuff out of my body. So he and Bruce Laurie, his friend and co-author, started setting up a bunch of different experiments over a year or so where they could track how do they get the toxins out of themselves. And they went and they tried all the snake oils and all those little charms. They soaked their feet in strange things. They did all this stuff, and they tested themselves to see, does it make a difference? Does it actually do anything? And so that's what this new book is, and I really encourage you to check it out if you haven't. It's a great read. It's written in a really conversational, really open style, but it's fascinating stuff. So one of the experiments was organic. And what happens when people start eating organic? And so with the help of a retailer in Toronto called The Big Carrot, the two authors got 9 families to go all organic for a week. Everything. The retailer gave them everything organic. And they didn't change their diet, they just changed it all to organic. So they still had their ice cream and their snacks, but even the herbs and spices they cooked with, everything went organic. So what they did was they got these families to go organic, and they tested the children's urine. They got them to pee in a cup every morning for 12 days. And so they started with their normal diet, what they'd been eating up until then, and then the whole family went all organic, and then they went back to their old diet. And that's what you're looking at in that chart there. So at the beginning, that's the organophosphate level. We all know organophosphates used in agriculture quite extensively, also known to have serious effects, especially on children, as far as neurological development goes, sexual development, all kinds of illnesses related and linked and known to be linked back to organophosphates. So what happens when you start eating organic? Within days, within hours, in fact, of eating organic, the organophosphate levels plummeted to almost an intangible level in all of the kids. And then when they started eating their old diet again, it doubled back up again, immediately. So the message here is, we know that organic helps you reduce your pesticide levels. We know that. And we know that those pesticides are carcinogens. We know that there's serious developmental problems related to them. And we know that organic can help you reduce those and avoid those as much as is possible. And we know that it's never too late to start, because the impact happens within hours. It's not like, oh, I've been smoking all my life, so why would I stop now? It's, no, start eating organic. The impact is immediate. So I think that's really important, and that's starting, this stuff is starting to come out, and it's going to help us grow, and we need to grow, and there's, as all of you know, a lot of demand out there, so we need to do some plow downs and start planning for the next phase of our growth, because you show that to some mums and some pregnant women, and there's a lot of demand for organic that comes out of that right away. So this is last week. We try every year to hold something called Organics on the Hill. We put the O in Ottawa as one of our slang. Thank you, I came up with that one. And so what we do is we try to meet with members of parliament. We try to show up, first of all, with a group from across the country. So we've got people, this is our group, this is Organic Group, and their associations, their businesses, their retailers. I don't know what the orange thing is, but it wasn't there. And what we do is we hold a party on Parliament Hill in Centre Block, so right under the Peace Tower there. And it's all organic food and beverage sourced from Canada. And we invite all of the MPs and the senators to join us, and their staff to join us. And we don't talk at them for an hour like I have been. We say a couple things. We say, listen, organic's important. It's growing. It's really a great business for many Canadian companies and many Canadian farmers. And you need to think about it and work with us to support it. And we treat them to great food, organic wine from across the country, organic beer, They have a great time. They love it. It has a reputation for having some of the best food on the hill. This was 6 days after the attack on Parliament. And you can see the flags at half-mast still. And we weren't sure if we'd be let in at that point. And thankfully, we were able to have that party that night. And then the next morning, we had a policy conference. We talked about a lot of the things I was talking to you about this morning. We talked about C-18 and the SEED Act. We talked about some provincial issues, about getting the regulations into our provinces. We talked about some of the changes to the regulations that are coming. And then we went out, we broke into groups of 3 or 4, and we went and met directly with 10 members of parliament who have a key relationship to the agriculture file. And we told them, we gave them a little package, we gave them lots of materials, we said, here's organic, here's our success story, here's our growth, here are some of the concerns we have, here's some of the issues we're facing, we need your help, we need you to talk to us, we're here now, we're grown up now, and we want to be part of the solution. And so that's a really important thing, to bring the sector together and to go to Ottawa. And I would encourage SOD and Organic Alberta and others in this area who want to be part of that to come on down to Ottawa, because it's a really, really good show of force when we do it. And it makes changes, because right around this, on either day outside of our event, were the committee hearings on C-18. And we had like 6 or 8 people in the room when there was testimony, and we had people testifying on both of those days about organic. And as a result of those meetings and of that testimony, we're now getting signals that they're going to make some adjustments to the SEED Act proposal to accommodate some of the concerns, we hope. So it can make a difference. Here's a son of Saskatchewan right here. That's the previous Parliament day, getting a growler of organic beer from us. He seemed pleased. So here, again, I mentioned at the beginning that there were going to be some of the changes, and these are some of the things that we need to prepare for. As I already said, the standards are under review and renewal, and this is a good thing, but it's going to change a number of things. As soon as those standards get published, obviously everybody here is going to have to figure out how exactly does it affect your production or your handling of organic. Are there any changes that directly impact you? And you're going to have to work with your certifiers to understand that. They will also automatically initiate a review of our equivalency arrangements with our trading partners. So our ability to just ship Canadian organics down to the States or to Europe or to Japan now, those will be reviewed to make sure we haven't introduced anything crazy into our standards that makes those agreements annulled. As I mentioned as well, the organic products regulations are being repealed. They're being pulled into a bigger omnibus bill. So we'll still have an organic law in Canada. It just won't be the organic law that we have now. It'll be part of a bigger law around safe food for Canadians. So we're coming in under food safety. And they're using the organic model as the model for the rest of agriculture now. They did this trial with us where we have the standards over here that the industry writes, and we have the law over here that says the standards are required. And then in the middle, we have inspectors and certifiers who make sure that that's all happening. And the government can enforce that and make sure that that's all happening. And they have audit powers, they have enforcement powers, they can pull products off the shelves, and they can take away somebody's certification if they need to. Obviously working through the chain of command with certifiers and accreditors. And they said we'd really like that system. We want to make everybody use that system. And so that's actually one of the things that organic has contributed to the policy framework in Canada now, is that the new Safe Food for Canadians regulations, which pulls, I think, 4 acts and 13 different regulations under one house, is actually going to use our system. But, so everybody else is changing. The chicken guys are all, their feathers everywhere. They're all worried because they have to now go from a law that they've had for like 50 or 60 years into this new system. We're not changing too much. We're actually in a pretty good place. But what it does mean is that we're going to be in the same law as they are. And so what happens, we're horizontal. We go across the board, right? So what happens if the chicken standards say, well, we're worried about avian flu, and we're going to say that no chicken can go outside. And that's in our standards, and the regulation says you have to follow our chicken standards. And we're in the same regulation, and our organic standards say you're not allowed not to let your chicken outside. What happens? And I brought that to the government, and they said, oh, we hadn't thought of that. That's weird. Anything else? I said, well, bacon. We can't have organic bacon because the definition in Canada says it has to have nitrates, synthetic nitrates added to it. And they said, oh, you think there's more? I said, there's going to be tons more. And so we need to start looking at that and what are the implications of this new regulation and what are happening with this commodity-specific standards as they come in. And the other thing, as I mentioned as well, is that the equivalency agreements, these trade agreements that are essential for us in our growth and our export markets, those will also have to be reviewed because they were based on the previous law and not this new law. So those are a couple of the changes that are happening that we have to be vigilant around. Another thing, though, that's really good is that the new law will give us, or give the system, the ability to suspend farmers from organic certification if they're doing something that knowingly is fraudulent or knowingly is going against the regulations or the standards. So we can kick them out and we don't have to let them back in. We'll have that power. We'll also have the power to levy fines, as they do in the US and elsewhere under the organic systems, which weren't part of our original regulation and was probably a bit of an oversight because we need to have that convincing ability to tell the consumer there are real laws in place with teeth and nobody's going to break them and tell you something's organic when it isn't. And that's really important for us. This is just a quick map of what's happened in the last 5 years. So everybody remembers 2009 and the Canada Organic Regime coming into place, the core, and our new logo. And then we got that equivalency deal with the US. And then we got one with Europe. And then they got one with Europe. And then they got one with Japan. And just a few weeks ago, we got one with Japan. So this is now the market map. And there are many other markets there, but with those 4 regions, North America, so Canada, the US, Europe, and Japan, that is with one certification, and there's all kinds of wrinkles and problems with these equivalencies, I know, but with one certification, you can access 96% of the world's organic market by sales. And the organic market is worth about $63 billion a year globally now. And counting. It's growing very fast. And we have the most recognized standards in the world. And that's a good thing. That's something we should talk about. We should use this export strength that we have, this ability to go to market, as one of our proof points about how good organics from Canada really are. The Japanese accept it. The Europeans accept it. The Americans accept it. And these are really important, I think, for us moving forward. So, I'm just wrapping up here. I want to have some time for questions if anybody has any or comments. I'm sure a few of you like to comment rather than question. I'm closing with the map again, just so we can kind of come back to our national overview, looking at the success story. We really want to build the ability to update this soon and give you the newest figures, the best information. And then I also want to just close by looking at that crossroads again, and this concept of being at the crossroads and being in a trade environment, a heavy trade environment right now, but also that there's time right now, and in fact, it's probably the best time to start thinking about some of the plow downs we need for our sector moving forward. And if I could just leave you with a couple, I would say that we really need to invest in our sector. You need to support your provincial associations. You need to join my organization. We're all really strapped for cash, and we're doing good work. And if we don't have these groups around, when the market goes down again, there won't be those projects or those resources or that information that you need to get through some of that time until the market's hot again.